My name is Eliza Bennett. I'm 38 years old, and the moment my relationship ended didn't come with shouting, accusations, or anything dramatic enough to make sense of it. It came quietly, through an email. I work as an auto mechanic in Denver. Most of my days start early because the shop opens at 7, and people want their cars fixed before they head to work. It's steady, predictable. Engines either run or they don't. Problems have causes. Solutions follow if you know where to look. I've always preferred that kind of logic. My boyfriend, Daniel Whitmore, is 36. We've been together for 7 years, living in the same townhouse for about 5. The place is in my name. I bought it before we met, but over time, it became ours, in the way shared routines blur ownership. Daniel works as a regional manager for a retail company. His schedule shifts constantly. Late nights, early mornings, weekend calls. He talks fast, thinks faster, and rarely lets anyone finish a sentence if he thinks he already knows where it's going. When we first met, I thought that meant confidence. Over time, it started to feel like something else. Like impatience, like irritation that never quite settles. I don't argue much. I deal with enough frustration at work. Customers upset about costs, cars that don't cooperate, parts that arrive late. When I get home, I want quiet, something simple. Daniel doesn't really do simple. About 3 weeks ago, I was finishing paperwork at the shop after closing when my phone buzzed with an email notification. It came through a shared travel folder Daniel set up years ago when we planned a trip to Oregon. I almost ignored it, but the subject line caught my attention. Flight confirmation, Las Vegas. 2 passengers. At first, I assumed it was work-related. Daniel travels occasionally for regional meetings, and Vegas hosts plenty of retail conferences. That explanation made sense for about 3 seconds. Then I opened the email. The ticket was booked for 2 nights. Friday morning departure from Denver, Sunday evening return, no company name, no conference details. Just 2 seats. Daniel Whitmore. And beneath his name, Vanessa Hale. I didn't recognize the name immediately, but something about it felt familiar. Not enough to place it, just enough to linger. Both tickets were purchased together. Same payment method. Our joint credit card. The one we use for groceries. Gas, everything ordinary. I sat there in the shop office, staring at the screen longer than I expected. The building was already closed. Lights off, just the low hum of equipment somewhere in the back. People expect anger in moments like that. Something loud, immediate. What I felt was colder, because the situation didn't register as emotional first. It registered as structural. Daniel wasn't just hiding a trip. He was funding it through something we built together. Our accounts are simple. I made sure of that when we set them up. One joint checking account where both our paychecks land. From there, everything branches out. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, credit cards. Nothing complicated. Nothing hidden. Until now. I didn't call him. I didn't text. I closed the email and drove home like it was any other evening. When I walked in, Daniel was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, already mid-complaint about staffing issues at work. His tone was sharp, dismissive, exactly the way it always is when he talks about people he thinks are incompetent. He asked how my day was without looking up. I told him it was busy. That was the entire conversation. I watched him for a few minutes longer than usual. Not obviously. Just enough to notice things I might have ignored before. The way he smiled at something on his phone. The way he didn't mention anything about traveling. Not a word about Vegas. Not even a hint. That night, I didn't bring it up. Instead, I opened the banking app. If the email was the trigger, this was the confirmation. The charge stood out immediately. Just under $900. 3 days earlier. No explanation, no conversation, just sitting there between grocery runs and gas station payments like it belonged. I kept scrolling, looking for anything else out of place. Then I checked something most people don't think about. Control. Because while our accounts are shared, the structure isn't equal. I'm the primary account holder. Daniel has access, but I manage the settings. Limits, permissions, transfers. It was never about control before. It was just how things were set up. But sitting there looking at that charge, something shifted. For the first time, I stopped seeing our accounts as shared and started seeing them as something I could separate. I didn't change anything that night. I just looked at the calendar. Friday morning. 4 days. 4 days where Daniel believed everything was normal. 4 days where he assumed I knew nothing. And 4 days where I realized something else. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Because some problems don't need arguments. They need timing. The next morning felt exactly like every other morning we'd had for the past 5 years. Daniel left early, already on his phone before he even reached the front door, complaining about a supplier delay like it was a personal offense. I left 10 minutes later, coffee in one hand, keys in the other, the routine so familiar it almost erased what I knew. Almost. At the shop, I worked like I always do. Brake jobs, oil changes, a transmission issue that took longer than it should have, customers asking the same questions they always ask. Nothing about the day stood out on the surface. But underneath, something had shifted. Every quiet moment, every pause between tasks, my mind went back to the same place. Vanessa Hale. By mid-morning, I'd remembered where I knew the name from. Daniel had mentioned her once, maybe twice, early in our relationship, back when stories about the past still came up casually without weight. She was intense, he'd said, laughing it off like it didn't matter. I didn't think about it again after that, until now. Because people don't book flights with names from the past unless something from the past isn't finished. That thought stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because it hurt, because it explained things. That subtle distance I'd felt over the last year. The shorter conversations. The way Daniel seemed more irritated at home than he used to be, like everything around him required effort he didn't want to give. It wasn't sudden. It had been building. And I hadn't needed proof before. I just hadn't wanted to name it. That evening when I got home, nothing had changed. Daniel was in the kitchen this time, leaning against the counter, talking about inventory problems. His voice carried through the house before I even set my keys down. And they still can't get the numbers right. I swear, it's like I'm managing children. I nodded in the right places, asked one or two questions, played my part in the conversation the same way I always had. If he noticed anything different about me, he didn't show it. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because Daniel notices changes. He just didn't expect one from me. That night, after he went to bed, I opened the banking app again. Not to check. To study. There's a difference. I went through every setting carefully. Credit card limits, daily spending caps, transaction alerts, travel permissions. Then the debit card. Withdrawal limits, ATM access, geographic restrictions. The system was more flexible than most people realize. You just have to look. I didn't touch anything yet, but I mapped it out in my head. What would happen if the credit card stopped working? What would happen if the debit card declined outside Colorado? What would happen if the available balance in checking simply wasn't there anymore? It wasn't about revenge. Not the kind people imagine. There was no anger pushing me forward. Just clarity. Daniel relied on those accounts. Not consciously. That's the thing about shared systems. You stop thinking about them. You assume they'll always be there. Which meant, if something changed suddenly, he wouldn't notice until the exact moment it mattered. I closed the app and looked at the date again. Thursday. 1 day left. The next morning passed quietly. Daniel moved through the house like everything was normal. Coffee, phone, quick glance at emails, a comment about how he might have an early start the following day. I've got a meeting first thing, he said casually, not even looking at me. I might leave before you're up. I nodded. That makes sense? That was the only acknowledgement. No details, no explanation. Just enough truth wrapped around a lie to make it sound routine. Later that afternoon, at the shop, I checked the flight details again. Friday, 9:10 a.m., on time, gate assigned. Everything moving exactly as scheduled. I sat there for a moment, staring at the confirmation, then switched back to the banking app. This time I didn't just look. I tested, lowered the credit card limit temporarily, then raised it back, adjusted the debit card withdrawal cap, then reset it. The system responded instantly. No delays, no warnings, just quiet compliance. That was when I knew there wouldn't be any complications, no unexpected blocks, no errors. Everything would happen exactly when I told it to. That night, the house felt different. Not tense, not uncomfortable, just finished. Daniel sat on the couch again, scrolling through his phone, half listening to something on TV. He laughed at something I couldn't hear, then shook his head like the world was full of people beneath him. I watched him for a second longer than usual, not with anger, with distance. Because once you see something clearly, it's hard to unsee it. And what I saw wasn't just someone lying. It was someone who believed the lie would never matter. Before bed, he said it again. Early morning tomorrow. I nodded. Drive safe. That was the last normal thing we said to each other. Friday morning, I woke up before my alarm. The house was quiet. For a second, I thought he might still be there. Then I heard the garage door. 6 a.m. Right on time. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Heading to work early today. I looked at the screen for a few seconds, then replied with a thumbs up. Nothing more. I set the phone down and waited, not doing anything else, just waiting. At 8:45, I opened the airline tracker. Boarding had started. Groups moving through. Everything on schedule. At 8:50, I opened the banking app. My hands were steady. Not because I was trying to stay calm, because I already was. First, the credit card. One switch. Locked. 3 seconds. Done. Then the debit card. Withdrawal limit. 0. Travel restriction. Colorado only. Anything outside the state would decline automatically. Then the checking account. I moved most of the balance into my personal savings account. An account Daniel technically knew existed, but never used. Never thought about. The transfer took less than 10 seconds. When I finished, the joint account still looked normal. Same account. Same structure. But the usable money was gone. No credit access. No out-of-state transactions. No withdrawals. Just a shell. I closed the app and set my phone down. By then, the plane was already boarding its final group. Daniel was sitting somewhere in that airport, probably next to Vanessa, thinking the weekend was about to start. I picked up my keys and headed to work. By noon, I'd almost forgotten about it. The shop was busy. 2 brake jobs back to back. A delivery van with transmission issues. The kind of workload that keeps your hands moving and your mind focused. Then my phone started vibrating. I didn't check it right away. I finished tightening the last bolt on the brake assembly, wiped my hands on a rag, then glanced at the screen. Daniel. 3 missed calls. 1 message. Why is the card getting declined? I stared at it for a second. Then another message came in. I'm at the airport and nothing is working. Call me. I didn't call. Not yet. I set the phone down and went back to work. 15 minutes later, it buzzed again. The card is frozen or something. Did the bank flag fraud? Then another. Answer your phone, Eliza. I picked it up this time, looked at his name on the screen, and let it ring once more before calling him back. Because I already knew exactly how this conversation was going to start, and exactly where it was going to end. He answered before the first ring finished. No greeting, no hesitation. Just frustration, already sharp enough to cut through the line. What's going on with the card? His voice was tight, controlled, but only barely. I could hear the edge underneath it, the same edge he used on employees when something didn't go his way. I leaned against the tool cabinet, phone pressed to my ear, and let a second pass before answering. What do you mean? The credit card's getting declined, he snapped. Twice already. And the debit card didn't work at the ATM either. Did the bank flag something? Did you get a notification? I glanced at the airline tracker again. Gate closed. Flight status departed. So he wasn't at the airport anymore. He was already in the air, or at least supposed to be. Where are you right now? I asked. There was no pause. Denver Airport. The answer came too fast, too automatic. And just like that, the last piece fell into place. Because the system had already updated. The plane was climbing out of Denver. I let that sit for a moment, not correcting him, not reacting, just noting it. That's strange, I said evenly. I can check the account. Yeah, do that, he said, irritation rising. I'm trying to grab something before this meeting and nothing's working. Meeting. Still holding on to it. Still expecting it to sound normal. I opened the flight confirmation email again while he kept talking. Same details, same names. Daniel Whitmore, Vanessa Hale. 2 passengers. 1 story that didn't match. Daniel, I said, cutting gently through his words. What meeting are you flying to? There it was. The pause. Short, maybe 2 seconds, but long enough. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. Not calmer, sharper, defensive. I told you already. Regional planning meeting. No, you didn't. But I didn't say that. Instead, I asked the next question. Where is it? Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear the shift happening in his head. The recalculation. Las Vegas, he said finally. And the way he said it, like he'd just decided on it. Like the answer hadn't existed until I asked. I watched the tracker update again. Altitude increasing. Speed steady. Committed. So if it's a work trip, I said quietly, why are there 2 tickets? Silence. This time it's stretched. Not just a pause. A gap. Then the reaction came exactly the way I expected. Not explanation. Not denial. Anger. Why are you going through my emails? He shot back. That's actually insane, Eliza. You don't just snoop through my stuff like that. I let him finish. Every word. Every accusation. Because the louder he got, the clearer it became. The email came through the shared folder, I said when he stopped. The one you set up. That slowed him down. Not stopped. Just disrupted. He didn't have a response ready for that. So he pivoted, like he always does. Vanessa's just a co-worker, he said quickly. We're flying to the same meeting. That's it. I glanced at the payment details again. Both tickets. Same transaction. Same card. Our credit card, I asked. Another silence. Then, we can talk about this later, he said, voice tightening again. I need to land first and get to the hotel. Hotel. Not meeting, not office. Hotel. The word slipped out before he could stop it. And that was the moment everything aligned. Not emotionally, logically. Clean. Final. Daniel, I said. He didn't answer right away. Yeah? I shifted my weight against the cabinet, looking at nothing in particular. The credit card is locked. Silence. Complete. For a second, I thought the call had dropped. Then, what? The debit card won't work outside Colorado, I continued, just as calmly. And most of the money in the checking account isn't there anymore. Nothing. No immediate reaction. Just absence. Then it hit, all at once. Are you serious right now? His voice jumped, volume rising instantly. You can't just shut off my access to money while I'm traveling. What is wrong with you? There it was. Not confusion. Not concern. Entitlement. I let him keep going. Yeah, you need to fix this, right now. Stop playing games and unlock the card. Games. I almost smiled at that. Because from his perspective, that's what it was. Something temporary. Something he could push through. Like everything else. You're the one flying to Las Vegas with another woman, I said quietly. That stopped him. Not because he agreed. Because he needed a new angle. What exactly did you do? He asked, tone shifting again. Less loud, more controlled, more careful. I told him. Everything. Credit card locked. Debit restricted. Funds moved. Each piece laid out clearly. No emotion. Just facts. Another pause. Then his voice changed. Not angry this time. Tense. How am I supposed to pay for anything? He asked. Hotel, food, transportation. What am I supposed to do here? That was the first real question he'd asked. Not about us. About logistics. And that told me more than anything else. I didn't answer. Instead, I said something else. Before we talk about money, I said, you should explain why you're in Las Vegas with Vanessa without telling me. And just like that, he snapped again. No, this isn't about that, he said, voice rising. You don't get to control me like this. You don't get to sabotage my trip because you're paranoid. Paranoid. I let that word sit between us. Then I exhaled slowly. We're done, Daniel. Another silence. Short, sharp, like the moment before something breaks. You don't mean that, he said. I didn't respond to that. Instead, I said the only thing that mattered. The cards stay locked, and then I ended the call. The phone lit up immediately. Incoming call. Daniel. I watched it ring, then declined it. Another call. Declined. Third. Fourth. Then I opened the settings and blocked his number, just like that. Silence. No more calls. No more messages. No more noise. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and went back to work. The transmission job was still sitting there, half finished. Parts laid out exactly where I left them. Nothing had changed, except everything had. The rest of the afternoon passed like any other. Customers came in. Cars went out. Time moved forward without asking questions. Around 3, I checked my phone again. No missed calls. But there were emails. 3 of them. The first was exactly what I expected. Anger. He called me controlling. Said what I did was insane, that I had no right to trap him somewhere without access to money. The second was different. Still tense, but less aggressive. He asked if I could unlock the debit card. Just long enough to check into a hotel. The third was shorter, more direct. He'd landed. None of the cards worked. The hotel reservation failed. And then, one line that stood out. Vanessa thought he was paying. I read that twice, then closed the email. And for the first time all day, I actually pictured it. Las Vegas. Bright lights. Crowded terminals. 2 people standing at a check-in desk. One expecting everything to be covered. The other realizing too late that nothing was. I sat there for a moment, not feeling satisfaction. Not even relief. Just clarity. Because whatever he thought this trip was going to be, it wasn't that anymore. I finished work a little after 5 that evening. Same as always. Locked up the shop. Turned off the lights. Checked the bay doors twice out of habit. The sky over Denver was already starting to fade into that muted gray blue that comes just before night settles in. The drive home felt normal. Traffic where it always builds. The same red lights. The same turns I've made for years without thinking. But underneath that routine, something had shifted permanently. Not in a dramatic way. Just resolved. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I wasn't thinking about Daniel anymore. I was thinking about what came next. Inside, the house felt different the second I stepped through the door. Quieter. Not because anything had changed physically. Because something had ended. I set my keys down and stood there for a moment, looking around the living room. The couch. The kitchen counter. The space we'd filled with shared habits that now felt temporary. Like they had always belonged to a version of us that didn't exist anymore. I didn't sit down. I didn't hesitate. I picked up my phone and made the first call. A divorce attorney? One of the guys at the shop had mentioned him last year after going through his own situation. Said he was efficient, straightforward, didn't waste time. The consultation was exactly that. Clean, direct. Colorado is a no-fault state. That was the first thing he said, meaning the reason didn't have to be proven, just documented. Once I explained the situation, shared finances, the property being in my name, the trip, the other woman, he didn't react with surprise. He reacted with process. Paperwork, filing, timeline. By the end of the call, he was already preparing the initial documents. I thanked him, ended the call, and set the phone down. Then I started packing. Daniel had a lot of things in the house, more than I realized until I started separating them. Clothes in the closet, shoes lined up near the door, work documents stacked neatly on the desk, his laptop, small things in the bathroom, razor, cologne, things that feel insignificant until you're the one deciding where they belong. I moved through it methodically, no hesitation, no second guessing, just sorting. What was mine? What was his? It took 2 trips to load everything into my truck. By the time I closed the tailgate the second time, the house already felt lighter. Not empty, just clearer. His parents live about 30 minutes outside the city. The drive there was quieter than the one home. No traffic this time. Just open road and the low hum of the engine. When I pulled into their driveway, the porch light was already on. His mother opened that door before I knocked. She looked surprised. Of course she did. Her son's life was sitting in the back of my truck. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I kept my voice even. "Daniel went to Las Vegas this morning," I said. "With another woman." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain beyond that. 'Cause I didn't need to. Her expression changed. Not shock. Something heavier. Understanding. His father stepped into the hallway behind her, looking past me toward the truck. Neither of them argued. Neither of them asked me to reconsider. They just nodded, like something they had suspected had finally been confirmed. We unloaded everything together, box by box, bag by bag. No one said much. There wasn't anything left to say. When I got back into my truck, his mother thanked me quietly. I nodded once and drove away. By the time I got home, it was fully dark. The house felt different again. Not just quieter this time. Empty in the right places. I walked through each room once, not checking, just seeing. Then I changed the garage code. The front door locks. Simple things. Practical things. The kind of things you do when something is over. After that, I opened my phone. His number was already blocked. His emails still coming through. I blocked those too, one by one, until there was nothing left connecting us. 2 days later, I got confirmation he was back in Denver. Not from him, from his father. A voicemail. Short. "She's staying with us for now," he said. He corrected himself halfway through. Daniel, he's here." Even then, there was a pause. Like the situation didn't quite fit into words. The divorce papers were delivered the following week. No argument. No confrontation. No drawn-out conversations trying to explain what had already been made clear. That was the last direct interaction between us. Looking back, the strange part isn't what happened. It's how quiet it all felt. No screaming. No broken plates. No dramatic endings. Just a series of decisions, each one final. Daniel planned a weekend in Las Vegas. He just didn't plan for what would be waiting when he came back.